last time we did a Candles in the Dark role play, and you had said at the Candles in the Dark seminar that when you're doing a public debate, you do it differently, as in you try to make the other person just look stupid. Can we do a 15-minute role play of that where I'll be the statist and you'll just try to make me look stupid?
Okay, so me not being gentle. We can certainly do that.
Terrific. All right. So yes, I'll be using logical fallacies. This is a role play. All right. We'll just stick it to 15 minutes. So Larkin, are you one of these guys who just wants no government?
Not only do I not want it, but it's impossible for it to be legitimate, which is the main reason I don't want it, for the same reason I don't want Santa Claus. It's an impossibility, and believing in it only causes trouble.
Don't you think it's kind of arrogant, like every society throughout the world in all of history has chosen to have a government, and you just have outsmarted all these people?
There are lots of things that most or all of society has believed that has been horrendously destructive and stupid for a long time. The truth doesn't depend on how many people believe something, and reality doesn't depend on how many people believe something. Yes, lots and lots of people believe in government. Most people believe in government around the world, and the end result is hundreds of millions of people murdered and billions of people violently oppressed. It's not just a good idea because everybody has been taught to believe it.
But I don't want to get into this whole philosophy thing you libertarians like to do. We need schools. We need roads to get places. We need a police force to protect us from domestic crime. We need a military to protect us from foreign crime. Why is that so difficult for anarchists and voluntarists to accept?
While I may bicker about exactly what those would look like, I don't disagree with any of what you just said. I'm in favor of libraries and schools and roads and all that. What I'm not in favor of is pretending that somebody has special rights and gets to force me and force you to fund a version of it that I don't think is even useful, that I don't think is moral, that I don't think is good. The same way I think food is pretty damn important to humanity, and yet I don't want government violently controlling it. I want people voluntarily organizing and cooperating, as they already do, to including in joint efforts. A bunch of people can work together. This isn't every man for himself. You can have all manner of organization and all manner of complex endeavors. I just don't think it should be violently imposed on anyone. And I don't want you forced to fund anything you're against. And I hope you would return the favor and not ask government to force me to fund anything that I'm against.
But I mean, you talk like we live under some dictatorship or monarchy. We have representatives that we choose every 2, 4, and 6 years. Why? What is the difference between choosing to shop here and buy this product and choosing that senator to act on your behalf in government?
Because it's basically the difference between choosing what car you're going to buy and choosing what carjacker is going to steal your car. If there's a number of choices and whoever you choose is going to claim the right to violently control you and steal your money, you're not free. That's like slaves being allowed to decide which slave master is going. Slavery is still immoral, even if you let the slave have a choice and say, hey, you can choose any of these 5 or 10, maybe 100 different slave masters. You get to decide which one owns you. It's still immoral. It doesn't matter that you give them the choice. And in fact, giving them the choice is what gives apparent legitimacy. It's why the rulers can say, you've consented to this and we're representing you, which has always been a they can get away with actually more tyranny when they let you vote first, which is why communist China and the Soviet Union and North Korea, among almost every other regime, lets them vote. So it gives the impression that, well, the people chose this. But no, if I'm choosing somebody to beat me up and steal my money, that's still not moral. It's still not freedom. It's just choosing which flavor of violent, evil domination I want to be subjected to.
But Larkin, these experiments have pretty much been done already. We've had total free markets in the 1920s that gave us the Depression. We had total freedom before Lincoln stepped in to free the slaves. we had total freedom before the latest financial crash, and look what happens. We need a state to step in and sort of perfect the imperfections of society. These experiments have been done. Why can't you accept that and move on?
Well, it's funny because all of the examples you gave were not at all examples of freedom. For example, the institution of slavery in this country was maintained only because you had a ruling class that said it was legal and sent out armies of enforcers to enforce the ownership of human beings by other human beings and to chase down the slaves. In fact, slave catchers were the original law enforcers in this country. So to pretend that freedom led to slavery, but Abraham Lincoln saved the day, that's not at all how it went. But if you boil this to, instead of like theorizing and making up different versions of history, if you boil this down to a very simple level, let me ask you, do you think you would be better off being able to decide for yourself what to help with, what to fund, how to manage your own life, how to help other people? Or do you think you would be better off if I get to force you to fund whatever I think you ought to do, and whatever I think, whatever behaviors I think you should do, whatever habits I think you should? Which of those do you think is going to work better for you? You being allowed to be free and control your own life, or me violently controlling your life?
Well, in that specific instance, I think that I would be, but I'm not one of these rugged individualists who it's just me, me, me. I care about society. I care about the collective. So I don't care what's best for me. I care about what government can do on behalf of society to make us living together better.
Wait, which of the following sounds more compassionate to you? I want you to be, and this is what I actually think. I want you to be left in total freedom. I don't ever want you to be forced to give one penny to something that you don't want to fund or something you're against. I don't want force ever used against you unless you're actually attacking somebody and they need to defend themselves. Is it more compassionate and caring and open and for the common good for me to have that attitude? Or is it more compassionate for me to say, I don't care about your freedom. I don't care if you earned money. I don't care what choices you would make. I'm going to violently control you and violently take your money in whatever way I think is going to serve the common good. Which of those sounds more compassionate to you?
Well, it would depend on why you're forcing me. If you're just forcing me because you're a power-hungry lunatic, then no, then that would be immoral. But when you're doing it to create a social safety net or to stop a foreign invader from entering the country, bombing us, enslaving us, then in that case, it would be justified.
Well, if I'm government and you're the subject, you don't get to decide my authority over you. That's kind of the point. For you to say, well, I'd be okay if you did this or this or this with my money. The whole point is you don't get to choose. I get to choose. And if I want to do warmongering and do all sorts of, Ponzi schemes and anything else, the anarchist me, says you should get to choose that. You, the statist, says somebody else should get to choose that for you and force it upon you whether you like it or not. You can hope all you want that you're going to get a government that will do exactly what you hope they would do with your money. There is zero chance of that ever happening. It's never happened in your lifetime. It will never happen in your lifetime. I'm the one saying, don't give anyone else permission to violently control you and then hope they do it in a benevolent way. Control your own damn life.
But it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You say, government doesn't care about us. They just do whatever they want. Well, the problem is when people don't get involved to make the system work, this system doesn't work. So the reason that government doesn't represent us, the solution is for us to get more involved, not just to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, no laws, no government, everyone just do what they want. I don't care about anyone else.
Getting more involved in the institution of slavery, whether you're trying to pick a new slave master to control you or whether you're trying to become the new slave master, so whether you're voting or whether you're running for office, doesn't make it moral, it doesn't make it legitimate, and it doesn't make the outcome any better. So that this whole thing of we, the subjects of the ruling class, have to get involved, it really is schizophrenic and insane to say, we're going to appoint a master over us who can violently control us and take our money for whatever he wants. but then we're going to try really hard to talk him into doing with our money what we would have done with it ourselves. Why don't you just not appoint the thief to begin with and spend your own damn money and make your own damn choices instead of trying so hard to do something that absolutely never works, which is to have government serve the people. It's like giving somebody permission to steal your car and then being surprised that he steals your car and uses it for his benefit instead of yours. Stop giving him permission to violently dominate you, and then you won't play the ridiculous game of begging the thief to be nicer about the way he spends what he stole from you. It's ridiculous. It really is like saying, I don't believe in freedom. We should have a slave master, but then we're going to really loudly petition the slave master to tell us to do what we wanted to do anyway. Why don't you just not have a slave master and do what you wanted to do anyway?
Yeah, I get what you're saying in theory, but the reality, I think, would be corporations making cheap products that harm individuals, say cars, could end your life if those are not regulated, or kidnappers. I mean, who would go chase down a kidnapper and put those people in prison? So I really don't think this has been totally thought through.
I would chase down a kidnapper, and I wouldn't rob you to do it. If other people wanted to chip in or not, I'm one of the ones who would actually use defensive force to protect innocent people against actual aggressors like kidnappers and murderers and rapists and whoever. But it's completely ridiculous for me to say, because I would go use defensive force to stop a bad guy, I better have the right to be an aggressor over here. I'm going to force you to pay for my security services, whether you want to or not. And if you don't pay up, I'm going to put you in a cage. To pretend that's me protecting you is ridiculous. And that's what government does. Even when they go after a bad guy, you are forced to pay them to do their version of protection, and they will put you in a cage if you don't.
But a lot of times when we don't appreciate the things that we have, something worse comes and takes its place. For example, the Tsarist government in Russia was horrible, but when they took that down, the Soviet Union came about. I'm not saying the Kaiser in Germany was a good guy, but it was a hell of a lot better than Hitler. Same with Mao's China. So aren't you worried a power vacuum would exist in this type of society?
It's important to make the distinction here. I'm not talking about taking the current regime and blowing it up or throwing it into the ocean. I'm talking about changing what people believe in. As long as people believe in the legitimacy of government, yeah, knocking one over is just going to result in people putting up another one, often one that's even worse than the last one, like the examples you just gave. When this insane notion that we need a political ruling class, there is no power vacuum. There's no such thing as a power vacuum if the people don't believe in the legitimacy of a ruling class. If you came along to a country of, like, let's say it's the US, and everybody here figured out, oh yeah, government's bogus and illegitimate, and you came along and said, I'm in charge now. What do you think is going to happen when 100 million gun owners say, no, you're not? The belief in people's heads is the problem. What's happening in Washington, D.C. is a symptom. The actual problem is the belief in government between 300 and some million sets of ears that think is legitimate. Yeah, as long as that's there, changing the regime or tinkering with it doesn't do any good. Changing that belief and having people actually believe in self-ownership and non-aggression, that's my goal, and that's the only way out of tyranny. You can't go do something to government. As long as people still believe in government and have it fix the problem, they're just going to put up another one.
All right. I have been convinced that in principle and practically, anarchism is morally superior and economically superior, but I am a government employee. My wife is a government employee. Our kids go to government schools. My parents and in-laws are on Social Security and Medicare. How can you in good conscience advocate a society that would seriously ruin my life?
For the exact same reason I can advocate stopping carjackers and purse etchers from doing what they do. Their livelihood depends upon them benefiting from immoral violence. That's not okay. They should go find something else to do that doesn't depend on receiving stolen loot. And if it's tough for people to not be recipients of stolen loot, I can sort of sympathize, but not nearly as much as I sympathize with the victims who will continue to be robbed to pay for the stolen loot that you receive.
And that is it for our role play. That was terrific. Thanks so much.
Okay.